Welcome back. I didn't record anything for 2 days. I ate too many chocolate turtles that my parents sent to me for Valentine's Day, of all things, and then I slipped into a coma. So I hope that that is an acceptable explanation for you. On that note, we probably should start up the running again soon, but there is currently some sort of polar blast happening in New York that turns you into a popsicle every time you go outside. So we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to talk about the Champions League. Because that happened, that wrapped up, and honestly, the Tuesday was so much more exciting than the Wednesday. I'm not going to waste your time with a massive deep dive on the Wednesday. Dortmund was able to hang on to their 3-0 lead against Sporting, obviously. That is a big surprise, by the way. Ruben Amorim managed to make Sporting worse and Manchester United worse with his, departure, which that's hard to do. It's hard to go 2 for 2 in that situation. Sporting was one of the teams in the top 8 when he left. They nearly fell out of the top 24, get handled pretty roundly by a Dortmund team that's been so bad this year in the Bundesliga that they fired their coach. And yet Dortmund manages to make it really to that pedestal that they always seem to make it to, which is a nice cushy round of 16 appearance in the Champions League. But maybe the most exciting part of the entire day was PSG beating the ever-loving breasts off of Stade Brestois with a 7-0 win to make it 10-0 on aggregate. Now, I saw one or two people try to weaponize this as saying the Champions League's allowing too many teams through. And it's like, no, I mean, there were teams that would have been able to put up a better fight against PSG in this round. But if they wanted to actually play in this round, they probably should have earned it. Stade Brestois did earn it. They had an amazing league stage. I said it in the initial matchup, and I said it after their first match day, which PSG, of course, won 3-0. This is a tough match for Stade Brestois. One of the advantages teams like Club Brugge have is they're unknowns, right? They're able to put together their normal, successful strategy, and the team that they're playing against just isn't nearly as familiar with it and has never been on the field with it before. But when you're a team like Stade Brestois that plays in a league where there is, it'd be the same as a team like Sevilla or Valencia going up against a team like Real Madrid, right? Where you're saying, okay, or like a Real San Sebastian, for example, you play them a couple times a year. You're not going to catch them by surprise. They know the personnel. They know exactly what you're doing. And after that 3-0, Stade Brestois clearly did not show up ready to play, particularly in the last 45 minutes, and they gave up 5 more goals. And obviously they got to wear the egg on their face, but it's still a very nice run for them to be able to get to the knockouts. They just got completely outclassed and out-efforted by PSG because, well, PSG knew what the hell they were coming up against. Then it was PSV and Juventus. My main takeaway from this situation is that Italy ends up looking real bad. Feyenoord knocks out AC Milan. PSV knocks out Juventus. It's just Inter now, right? Like there are more Dutch teams than Italian teams going into the round of 16 of the Champions League, unless I'm forgetting somebody. And we're going to go through the matchups in the next round in a second. So if I'm forgetting somebody, then I'll figure it out. You don't need to comment. I will get there eventually. But PSV pulling off this win, I mean, Juventus played well. PSV just played better. And it's not like, I don't want to go at the Italian league too much with that takeaway because the margins were obviously fine. This on aggregate ended up being 4-3. Okay, it came in, it was Juventus 2-1 on aggregate, and PSV scores. It was Perisic, who's apparently still just 32 years old somehow. Then Timothy Weah, the American, scored a nice goal. And then there was one from Salaberry to send it to extra time. The extra time PSV is able to score and able to win the match, right? Huge. 1 goal elimination of AC Milan, 1 goal elimination of Juventus. But these Dutch teams have been doing it to everyone. They have been playing really well the entire time. Right, Dutch teams all over the place, even Ajax, we're going to talk about in the next video, right? They have been pulling out results, pulling rabbits out of hats with really impressive consistency. I don't know why the league has taken such a step forward, but I think it says more about the Netherlands than where that league is right now and the number of quality teams in that league than it does about Italy, that they happen to lose a couple of really tight ties in the Champions League. And then, of course, the one where everybody is just slam dunking on Manchester City. But let's be honest, we knew before they went to the Bernabeu that this was a long shot. They've been in terrible form all year. Manchester City was a buzzsaw for 5 years. They were unstoppable. They barely lost a game. They were like the Zinedine Zidane Real Madrid team that, win more trophies than matches lost. They didn't lose. They controlled matches. It was often boring. It was always impressive. And they're not that anymore. And you know what? Real Madrid is better than they have been. Okay, at least they have more talent. right? It's hard to argue that. Kylian Mbappe showed up in this game with a hat trick, which I have to imagine was a huge weight off his shoulders. Nobody's going to be looking at him anymore like, what is he doing for Real Madrid? He just scored a hat trick in the Champions League knockouts against Manchester City. So I think he's fine. In Manchester City, he's just in full reset mode. They have been in full reset mode. The only reason that they weren't, the only reason they were trying to hang on to some vestige of hope for this season was the fact that they were still going in this tournament. The fact that they managed to scrape their way by Club Brugge, which turns out to be more impressive than a lot of people thought, in order to get into the knockouts. And then they end up against Real Madrid. And like anybody ends up against Real Madrid, they're probably going to lose this tie, particularly Manchester City. I was not surprised that that one was a blowout. And that leaves us with this bracket, these matches remaining. And PSV got screwed. PSV is now playing against Arsenal in a round of 16 with Real Madrid playing Atletico Madrid. Atletico Madrid also got screwed. They got into the last 8, so they are a seeded team playing against an unseeded team that advances from there, and that unseeded team turns out to be Real Madrid. So congratulations, Atleti. You just can't avoid them. But this is a hornet's nest of a corner of the bracket up here with those 3 teams. Arsenal very well could drop it to PSV as well, because as we were just discussing, these Dutch teams, they have hands. And if you're not careful, Arsenal should win that. But then again, this weekend, they just lost to West Ham. Okay. So all you need to do is slip once, and these teams will take advantage, right? If you make 1 or 2 mistakes, PSV could totally be walking through this into the quarterfinals. Let's not pretend like that's not the case. And Arsenal is still getting its feet wet in these big European competitions with the core of teams that it has. The best tie in this round, though, PSG against Liverpool. That is the best tie in this round, bar none. PSG is white hot. I think we might be looking at 2 of the best teams in the world. I think we could be looking at 2 of the 3 best teams in the world. Like, it's Liverpool, PSG, Real Madrid. Right now, I think that might be where we're at. I mean, it's not like Bayern was inspiring anybody against Celtic, okay? These might be 2 of the best 3 teams. I'm not going to put either of them ahead of Real Madrid right now, even though they both might be there, because PSG doesn't have the star power, but the team's playing like absolute lawnmower, okay? They have, ever since they warmed up in the Champions League, they've been mowing people down. This is going to be one hell of a tie. This is going to be appointment viewing in both legs. Could create one of those famous European moments. We will see. Then whoever wins that tie is going to win in the quarterfinal as well. They're lined up against Club Brugge and Aston Villa, which, as a connoisseur, love the fact that we get a round of 16 match in the Champions League between Club Brugge and Aston Villa. What an opportunity for Aston Villa. It is so hard to make it into the Champions League as a non-Big Six team. Even for some of the Big Six teams, it is just so damn hard to make it into Champions League play out of the Premier League. You don't know the next time you're going to get this chance, right? If you're Club Brugge, you're going to be back here next year. You're going to be right back in the Champions League group stage. There isn't this kind of finality to it. If you're Aston Villa, you do not know the next time you will have the opportunity to play Champions League knockout football. Then you get served up Club Brugge. I know they're dangerous, and they just really put Atalanta's feet to the fire. But I mean, if you're looking at every team that's in this round, is there a team talent-wise, reputation-wise, that you would rather play than Club Brugge? No. And as long as they can hold their nerve, Aston Villa might be able to create a unique environment at their club where they're into a Champions League quarterfinal with it all to play for and all to believe for, and that's a lot of fun. On the flip side, if you're Club Brugge, you dodged a lot of the big guns. All right, it could have been a little easier. You could have gotten a non-Premier League team, but you're also sitting here saying, hey, wait a second. We just beat Atalanta. Village, you're not really that far away from that, right, on paper and what they've been able to achieve. And so this is a chance. This is going to be an optimistic, intense tie for both of these teams. Then Benfica and Barcelona. Benfica is able to edge its way by Monaco to get into this round. I think Barcelona is a whole step above them. And I think they're looking at their corner of the bracket, feeling really, really good. Dortmund and Lille is not a super intimidating tie. We already talked about the fact that Dortmund has not been that good this year overall. They got a bit of a layup in the previous round against a Sporting team that is reeling. And Lille is capable of beating big teams, but they just aren't a European heavyweight. Like they've had a very good tournament in order to get into the top 8. And obviously they beat Real Madrid on that. I think it was a Jonathan David penalty at the time. So they're dangerous. And I expect them to beat Dortmund. But Barcelona is the big favorite in this section of the bracket. And they are, don't write it in pen, but write it in pencil that they're going to be going to the semifinal out of this group of 4 teams. Anything can happen, but if I'm a Barca fan, I'm incredibly happy with the way that this whole thing has shaped up, right? Because you just dodged all the teams that you really don't want to run into. I mean, it's never going to be super easy because it's literally the last 16 of the Champions League, but you dodged all the ones that you go, ah. And speaking of those teams, Bayern Munich is up against Bayer Leverkusen in a Bundesliga showdown. That's cinema. These two teams have been at each other's throats for the last 2 years, and they play excellent matches against each other, and I can't wait for that to turn into a Champions League deal, right? I mean, Bayern is starting to run away with the Bundesliga a little bit, but Leverkusen's kind of keeping them in touch. They played a match, I think it was on the 14th. I just had to look it up to make sure. It ended up being a 0-0 draw, so Leverkusen's trying to keep the pressure on there, but this is for, the other trophy that they're going after, Leverkusen and Bayern Munich, awesome. And then you have Feyenoord and Inter. Feyenoord has a chance to be the most hated club in Milan. Okay, they already took out AC Milan. Now they're going for Inter. This is the last Italian team left. You lost AC Milan. You lost Atalanta. You've lost Juventus all in the previous round. Like, you cannot, if you are repping the Italian league, you cannot lose the last club in Italy to Feyenoord in the round of 16, or else there will be a bit of a reckoning in Serie A for not being able to produce a club that can make it in these types of tournaments. I mean, I'm old enough, and I'm not that old, right? I'm old enough to remember when Juventus was like a regular, team in the European finals, and that's even after the era where AC Milan and Inter and, those clubs were the best teams in the world. They were still producing at least one team every year that you felt like had a chance to win the Champions League, even if it was an outside chance. This year, in the last couple of years, even when you had one make the final, it didn't really feel like that. And now you have, all 3 teams that got knocked out in the previous round lost to a team from a league that is not a top 5 league. Bad look. Right. And then if you have all 4 of your teams get eliminated by teams not from the top 5 league, 3 losses to the Dutch league, 1 loss to the Belgian league, I don't know what to tell you, man. The fall has been far, and the fall is getting farther for the Italian league. And new clubs are coming to the fore. And in this format, you really got to go out and earn it. And Inter was the only one that was able to get into the top 8, and their reward is Feyenoord. And that is not, as AC Milan learned, an easy reward, because if you make mistakes, they're going to go out and beat you. But I think Bayern Munich and Leverkusen, I think the winner of this tie is going to be the favorite to go through to the semifinal, even if it is Inter that comes through, just based off the strength of everything that we've seen so far. But I like this bracket, very evenly distributed, gives us, a couple of excellent matches in the round of 16, but also sets up, room for upsets, but we don't have too many big clubs running into each other where we're going to end up with, let's say, an Aston Villa in the final that didn't have to earn it. They could make it there, but you want to make those clubs have to be able to earn it against a PSG or a Liverpool before they get there. I think we've dodged that with this draw, which is nice.